father, as the ambassador, rode out there. And my mother, myself, and my younger brother went with him. And we were there, watched them come parade past in front of Ras Tafri, who was later to be the Emperor Haile Selassie. It was an unbelievable sight. The chiefs were dressed in their magnificent robes, and with their lion's mane headdresses, and their shield ornamented with gold or silver. So the whole time it was the thunder of the war drums and the blare of the trumpets, and then countless banners floating above them. And then the footmen coming along dancing, and the minstrel, and all of them waving their swords and shouting out what they'd done. It is something which made an enormous impression on me. I think that probably decided my life.
On May the 5th, 1936, the Italian troops of Marshal Badoglio entered Addis Ababa, bombing, machine gunning, and gassing this country into submission. Goliath had won the first round. Over this countryside for 5 years, he sent out his punitive columns to keep his Philistinian peace. But the revolt went on, against the dizzy background of the Abyssinian mountains, where the people waited in extraordinary confidence for the day when their own monarchy should return and the tyrant's flag should be pulled down. 4 years later, an aircraft unknown to the Abyssinian came over the western horizon. It dropped no bombs. Sheaves of yellow paper fluttered through the upland sunlight down to the plateau. They were stamped with the seal of the Lion of Judah, Haile Selassie I. My beloved people, they read, I rejoice to announce to you that I am once again among you. I have come with the invincible might of Britain. This verse from the Psalms of David is the watchword of our revolt. Ethiopia raises her hands towards God. Drums beat out the signal. Ethiopia raises her hands from tableland to tableland. Messengers, servants of the great chiefs of Ethiopia, who in many provinces had not submitted to the Italians, spread the news also to the villages. And the Ethiopians pulled out the old rifles that had lain in the thatch of their houses when the Italian police passed through. They saddled their horses and mules, harnessed them into fierce bits of war, and hurried to the chieftain's camp. This was the Abyssinian mobilization, the formation of the famous Patriot army in its rags and its bare feet, which struck such fear into the Italians and crumbled their resistance behind the battle line, where at Keren and on the Juba River, in Asmara and Harar, the British regular war machine was pounding their wearied troops. And this is the headquarters of the man who at his emperor's command held up the flag of Ethiopian liberty for 5 years. Ras Ababa Aragai, in 1935 and 1936, chief of the Addis Ababa police. A quiet, astute, gentle-voiced officer, incapable of shouting Duce, Duce in any language. One of the bravest men in the modern world. Ababa Aragai has spent the past 5 years never more than 100 miles from Addis Ababa. With a price on his head, he's been wounded in battle half a dozen times. He's foiled more than one Italian expedition of 15,000 men. And now the promised arms are coming. British rifles with British bayonets, all sorts, Martinis, Lee Medfords, Lee Enfields, and American rifles, Springfields. It was the chance shipment from America that gave the first armed impetus to the revolt, and captured Italian rifles in their thousands. Few lost lessons in guerrilla warfare from the Ras Ababa Aragai. Don't be foolish, he says, as many of you were in 1935 and 1936. Don't go en masse in front of their machine guns. In 5 years, we've learned a lesson or two in mountain fighting. The night attack, the war of nerves, and of unnerving shrieks in the dark. The war of light hand grenades stolen from the Italians. The attack on the flank, the ambush from the stone sangre. That long hair on your heads is the badge of the Arbenya, the Ethiopian guerrilla fighter. It is the outward sign of your form as irregular soldiers. Now into the lorries, troops, rifles, bayonets, provisions and all. And we'll show the Italians what we mean by Ethiopian independence. The Patriot armies whip up their arms, food and drink. Beer made of Abyssinian barley, called tala, and mead made of Abyssinian honey, called tej. Meanwhile, the Ras gives orders to his staff. The women bring small sacks of millet to cook cakes, and the dried peas called shimbala that are Ethiopia's hardest rations. The women and the children are going to battle with the men. The little boy carries his father's rifle until the moment when father thinks that he can draw a bead on an eye-tie. If father dies, then the rifle belongs to the little boy. Mother and son will give father a good Christian burial on the battlefield. They're stoical, but they're optimistic also. Perhaps they think it'll be the Italian who will lie stiff under our independent African stars. And then we'll have another rifle in the family for little brother to carry. This is the great seal of the realm. Around in Amharic letters are the titles of imperial authority. Haile Selassie I, King of the kings of Ethiopia, elect of God, the Lion of Judah has conquered. It is the proof that the emperor, the seed of Solomon and of Sheba, has returned to take up his whole people in his hand. The Emperor Haile Selassie has crossed the great trench of the Blue Nile with 2 regular battalions of Sudanese and Ethiopians, with a cloud of patriots on either flank, with British officers whose daring ranks with that of Lawrence. Without one piece of artillery or one tank, he has defeated and demoralized the 30,000 Italian troops who held the western province of Gojam. He is 100 miles from Addis Ababa, into which the victorious army of General Cunningham has driven. The emperor has come to feature. He is near Debre Libanus, one of the holy places of central Ethiopia, where the Italians in 1937 machine-gunned to death 400 Ethiopian monks and chucked them into a common grave, where also his cousins, the sons of his principal Ras, Kassa, were executed by the Italians in the same year. His field commander is at his right hand, and on his left is the new British commander of his bodyguard. This is the heart of Christian Ethiopia, that island of Christianity, as the Emperor Menelik expressed it, in a sea of paganism for 1,500 years. And the Emperor, installed upon his throne, is head of the Ethiopian Coptic Church and superintends its ritual. Not greatly like our Christianity, you may say. The priests wear turbans and process under umbrellas with their silver-topped dancing sticks in their hands and their silver musical instruments that tap out the harsh refrain of the Coptic Psalms. The Psalms of David, the music and the rhythm of David himself as he danced before the Ark of the Covenant. These are as much a part of the Ethiopian Church as is the New Testament. A touch of the modern world. An English wireless operator takes down a message from the British command in Addis Ababa. It's an important message. It means the collapse of the Italian resistance in Ethiopia. It's good news to the head of the British military mission to Abyssinia, who at nearly 60 years of age entered Abyssinia almost single-handed in August 1940, and hunted by the Italians laid all the staff work for the revolt. Meanwhile, Ras Ababa rides at the head of his army to join his emperor. Dessier has fallen. The Duke of Aosta is in flight. We have captured more than 40 boxes of his personal baggage. Italian prestige will never stand up to this shock at the top. And so the road to Addis Ababa is open, except for a demoralized force of Italians in the valley ahead that the emperor and his commander in the field will have to bypass or drive through. From Addis Ababa comes General Cunningham, brother of the officer commanding the Mediterranean fleet, who by his staggering advance from Kenya to Mogadishu, Mogadishu to Harar, Harar to Addis Ababa, has set up new records in military speed and has shattered armies numerically 3 times as strong as his own. This is the first time that the emperor and the general have met, and it is the first junction of the forces from the Sudan and from Kenya. palace steps, a guard of honor from the Nigerian regiment await the emperor. And General Cunningham is there with the officers of his military administration. That with the fire of the Patriots won this war, meet together on the palace steps of Addis Ababa, while 30,000 Abyssinians cram the streets outside, shouting and throwing flowers, kissing the ground, waving the Abyssinian flag. To them, the emperor says, "Be Christian and kind-hearted to our defeated enemy, the Italian, and do not treat him as he treated you." So, in 5 years, the whirligig of time, often slow in motion, has brought its full revenge. It was revenge, the word. The Italians are safe. No one molests them. All the world disregards them. Somehow or other, the Ethiopians push the horrible memory of the 9,000 massacred in February 1937 to the back of their minds. The whirligig of time has brought its justice rather than its revenge. The so-called barbarians, the cruel people of Italian legend, has taught the so-called civilized fascist a lesson in forbearance, decency, and dignity. At his palace, the emperor receives the Patriot troops of Ras Ababa, who boast before him in the customary cockwork fukara of the Ethiopian fighting man. Each and all want to tell the emperor of his glorious deeds. How many Italian officers he killed, how many machine guns he took single-handed, how he is his emperor's devoted servant, to be sent to fight the battles of Ethiopia wherever his emperor desires. Then there is the quiet, serious voice of Ababa Aragai. "Your Majesty, I never hoped to see the sun of your face again in Ethiopia. I never dreamed that I would once more be happy. I was only determined to fight until I died for our independence, for our flag, for our Christian religion, and for you, my king." England and Ethiopia have a common link in St. George. He is their patron saint as well as ours. 5 years ago, as the black shirts marched into Addis Ababa, the priests of the Coptic cathedral smuggled out of the town the Ark of the Covenant of St. George. It is a famous ark throughout Ethiopia. It is the ark of the national consciousness and of self-defense against aggression. It was with Menelik when he defeated the Italians at Addis in 1896. It was with Ras Ababa Aragai throughout the Italian occupation. On a cold morning in Addis Ababa, it came back to the cathedral with the emperor and was put once more with hymns and sacred dance in the Holy of Holies. It was a cold morning, and it rained, but a right was restored on that day, and the chains were struck off the wrists of a whole people.
On the main road from Djibouti to Addis Ababa stands Diradawa, another name that brought glory to the imperial forces. Before the oncoming troops, the entire population fled to the capital, and today, Diradawa is deserted, a town of ghosts. The railway station here is an important one, and a military objective that the Allied bombers didn't miss. The railway workshops, too, came out badly against the onslaught of the men in the air. Over the aerodrome flies a Savoia 79, but it carries no threat of battle. It brings an envoy from the Duke of Aosta, the Viceroy of Italian East Africa, and he comes to plead for the safety of the civilian population of Addis Ababa. Meanwhile, where the troops are concerned, all roads lead to Addis Ababa, and this is the big push, and their pace never slackens. Once a proud highway of Mussolini's Africa, this road is now a sad story of broken bridges. The Italians' last attempt to stem the Allied advance, but they forgot the sappers. If a bridge can't be repaired, another is built in its place. and it has got to be able to take it. The lorries and armored cars it has to carry are not exactly perambulators. At Awash, a complete new bridge had to be thrown over the river. There it is, a monument to the skill and efficiency of the South African engineers. One of the sorriest wrecks is the railway bridge at Awash. Stretched over a ravine 200 feet deep, the Italians built it to last as long as their empire. Well, it did. All set for the last push, on to the capital. It's easy to get there now. They just follow the white flags. The land forces move quickly, but the Air Force beats them to it. South African Air Force bombers were early callers at this Addis Ababa aerodrome, and after their visit, the resident Capronis, Fiats and Savoyas were a little obsolete. Here's another Italian biting the dust. The bombers of the Imperial Air Forces were a smashing success. At last, headed by music strange indeed to the Abyssinians, the Imperial troops enter Addis Ababa. Escorted by a squad of Italian motorcycle police, the general officer commanding drives to the Viceroy's palace to accept the surrender of the city. Addis Ababa became the capital of Abyssinia in 1896, and it has been under Italian rule for the last 5 years. But all that is ended now. It regains its freedom as the colors of tyranny are hauled down to make way for the standard of liberty. The Italian Guard of Honor salutes the new regime. The fall of Addis Ababa does not quite mean the end of the Abyssinian campaign, but it's a good step towards it. This is a proud day for those who are leading this campaign to its victorious conclusion. From the Viceroy's palace, the general officer commanding goes to the hall of battle to read the official proclamation to the Abyssinian chiefs. This is the moment they have waited for. The oppressor's yoke is off, and the chief city of their land can raise its head. The flag flies again. The long-awaited day has at last arrived. The emperor returns to his capital. Ahead of him ride and march his victorious Patriot troops. High tribute has been paid to these men for their courage and endurance in action and under the hardship of long marches. The emperor in his car moves forward through the approaches to the city lined with hundreds of his joyful subjects. For them, freedom is riding in that car, with Haile Selassie as its symbol. For 5 years they have suffered under the Italian invader. For 5 years the fascists have systematically hunted down and exterminated those young Abyssinians who had set themselves to the task of civilizing and emancipating their country. The conquerors have been swept away, and with them has gone tyranny and suppression. Arrived in the city, the emperor is greeted by the general officer commanding. From the steps of the palace, he makes his first address to the people of the Ethiopian capital. On the anniversary of the day when 5 years ago he was forced to fly from the Italian aggressor, the Negus places himself once more at the head of his people. Their independence is safe, but Haile Selassie knows full well the great task that lies before him. But in his hands and with the assistance of Britain, the reconstruction of his country is assured. Abyssinia lives again. Addis Ababa, capital city of the Ethiopian Empire, and the scene recently of an historic event. Here in this room on the 29th of January of this year, an agreement was ratified between Great Britain and Ethiopia. It was more than just a document which was signed on that day by the Emperor Haile Selassie and Major General Sir Philip Mitchell. It was the first example of the redeeming of a solemn pledge, the pledge given by the democracies to fight for and finally liberate all those countries overrun by fascist aggression.
The price for supporting fascism. The twin monster of Hitler and Mussolini came to destroy them, resulting in the Second European World War. All of Europe was decimated. Judgment too came down on Italy. Floods, earthquake came. The end came for the Pope and Mussolini.
Here is the world's news in pictures, and this is Pathé Gazette screening it. With the macabre scenes in Milan, where the bodies of Benito Mussolini, his fascist accomplices, and his mistress Clara Petacci were kicked and spat upon by a seething crowd. From Milan, Mussolini began the march on Rome, which lifted him to power. In the same city, his story ended in this frenzied crescendo of hate and degradation, his body hanging from the roof of a petrol station.
Our second royal visitor is Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia, Rastafari, Lion of Judah, and King of Kings. Trinidad and Tobago is honored to receive this distinguished personage. Descendant of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon of Jerusalem, Haile Selassie, the 225th successor to the Ethiopian throne. This historic figure, regal, aristocratic, and humane, has ruled his country for 34 years, bringing the Ethiopian nation its first written constitution in 3,000 years. Our government and people welcomed him humbly but proudly. Religious ties and friendly links between our countries were renewed and forged with the visit of Emperor Haile Selassie and his distinguished party. Trinidad and Tobago salutes Ethiopia. In these critical times, the words of this world figure of peace assume great significance. In his native tongue, Amharic, His Imperial Majesty speaks to our Parliament and nation.
Distinguished members of Parliament, it gives great pleasure to appear before this distinguished assembly and to bring you the fraternal salutations of the Ethiopian people. The peoples of Ethiopia and of Trinidad and Tobago are today joined in a massive and a continuous effort to create for themselves a new and a better way of life. They face many of the same problems. The hopes derive from the same essential beliefs in the nature and the destiny of man. It is thus inevitable, too, that there should exist between these two great peoples the strong and lasting ties of friendship and understanding. We all know, as representatives of the people, that this is a particularly critical period in the councils of the 20th century. Sectional and dividing factors often cause major obstacles to national development in their expanded sense, as narrow national and ideological interests may threaten even national unity and progress. No one today is so foolish to believe that any one nation constitutes a perfect model of faith and ideology, nor could anyone wish that there should be such utter unity of thought and aspiration. The systems of government which have sought to impose uniformity of belief have survived briefly and then expired, blinded and weakened by excessive reliance upon the supposed infallibility. The only system of government which can survive is one which is prepared to tolerate dissentient criticism and which accepts this as useful and in any case inevitable aspects of all social and political relations. The tolerance of dissentient criticism within the government proceeds from a singular social phrase, that the government exists to serve the people generally. The representatives of peoples and nations can only come together with open and objective minds and willing hearts to engage in dialogue without rigid dogmas and slogans and without violence. Working this way achieves no instant utopia. It may, however, enable us to achieve together what it is possible to achieve, and to move forward steadily, if not always in great haste, with some degree of harmony and mutual understanding. Domestically, we can build strong and happy and resourceful societies. Internationally, we can force the end of oppression of man by man and nation by nation. We can bring about peace, security, and mutual trust which will open the way to the greater human achievement for which the needs of mankind now cry out. Distinguished members of Parliament, permit me to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude for the reception that was accorded me by the people of Trinidad and by the government and Tobago, which we are going to include in our visit. I hope will serve as an example for strengthening relations among nations that are dedicated to the same essential voice. Thank you.
After the Emperor's call for tolerance and unity, some of our outstanding leaders of the society and their wives were presented.